rational inquiry into search for truth and the idea that truth can be known is very characteristic of Western civilization. Now,
We are in St. Peter's Square on this rainy November day, but I have good news for all of you. I'm about to meet Samuel Gregg from the Acton Institute. He has written a wonderful new book called Reason, Faith, and the Struggle for Western Civilization. Let's find out together. Let's roll the intro and I'll see you there. When did this this struggle, this pull begin in your mind?
Well, I think it begins when we start to understand God as not having the characteristics of reason. If you think about the way that Judaism and Christianity have traditionally understood the nature of God, God is love, God is truth, God is also divine reason. So when the Gospel of John talks about, in the beginning was the Word, the Greek word for word is logos. And the point that the author of the Gospel of John is trying to make is that this God, who is now fully revealed to you in the person of Jesus Christ, is love, is truth, but is also divine reason. And this is very important because it tells us that if God is reasonable, we are reasonable. It also means that if we stop understanding God as having the characteristics of reason, then we start to separate the world of religion and the world of faith from the world of philosophy and the world of, for example, the natural sciences. Then you can see how the natural sciences and the social sciences start to drift away and see faith as a highly subjective thing.
In your book, you speak about this struggle for Western civilization, and one threat from the outside, which is faith without reason, and then one from within, which is reason without faith. Do you see one as being more dangerous?
They're both two sides of the same coin, right? Because faith without reason, which I think manifests itself most evidently today in certain forms of jihadism.
Of course, I remember when I was 11 years old, I remember the attacks on 9/11. I was 11, and I remember that shaped my entire perception of the outside. I grew up in California, and I remember the discourse on religion, and then the new atheists came in and kind of commandeered the narrative, saying, well, faith is superstition, faith is
irrational.
Right.
So when you see things like jihadism, that's clearly faith without reason, and to a certain extent the theologies that inform that have a vision of God as pure will, that you just obey. In that particular way, we end up with mass subjectivism, utilitarianism, we end up with mass relativism, and you only need to spend 5 minutes in a university in America or Europe to realize just how far that type of thinking is spread.
I know when I was younger, I thought that the greatest threat was from the outside. The idea even of Western civilization, of even having that term,
even being allowed to use that expression,
is problematic.
We need to ask ourselves, what do we mean by Western civilization? What we mean is a particular religious understanding of the world. Judaism and Christianity have integrated reason and faith in a rather unique way. Western civilization values freedom, very much values freedom. Political freedom, economic freedom, freedom of speech, rational inquiry into search for truth, and the idea that truth can be known is very characteristic of Western civilization. Now, I am not saying that no other civilization has been capable of replicating some of these things, because that's obviously not true. What is true, however, is that Western civilization, those things that I just mentioned, have manifested themselves in a unique way in the context of what we're calling Western culture, and that explains why Western culture is different from, say, Islamic culture, Shinto culture, or Confucian culture. And it's okay to say that not all cultures are the same, and they also are deeply informed by different conceptions of the nature of God. Islamic understanding of God, as any Muslim will tell you, is very different from the Christian understanding. And by the way, you don't actually have to be a religious believer to understand that. I think that's just a matter of fact. more than anything else.
It's like, I mean, right here we're underneath the colonnades
Yes.
of the Vatican, shaped by Christianity, which I know is at the heart of our civilization. One thing that really frightens me, removal of religion from the public square, and this idea that there's new ideologies that I find particularly toxic, intellectually dishonest. When you have, young students who are looking to you as a great thinker, what do you say to them in the classroom?
I have only a couple of rules, but one rule is you may not begin any sentence by saying, "I just feel that."
Yes.
And then students will look at you with a certain sense of puzzlement.
Are you saying feelings don't matter?
What I'm basically, then I say, because frankly, I could care less about your feelings.
Yes.
And then the temperature starts to rise, and I say, you're probably wondering why I don't care about your feelings. And you say yes, and I will say the reason I'm not interested in your feelings is I'm interested in what you think. We're here to reason together.
Yes.
And if we're only here just to emote to each other, to just express our feelings, then that is not a way of rationally pursuing truth.